I'm aware of the fact that you are currently watching a podcast on YouTube, and this question keeps returning in the year 2026, which is like, what is the thing that makes a podcast if everything is being made for video? And the question has kind of been raised recently because iHeartMedia has had a bunch of their podcasts and their shows go up on Netflix, and now you've got a podcast that you can watch on Netflix. What is going on? Well, we talked to Michelle Santosuosso and Jay Smooth about all of this, and one thing that really stuck with me that Michelle said in this conversation is, at the end of the day, the thing that makes a podcast is the thing that makes a radio show, which is the people are interested in a relationship with the host.
That is the power of what I think will eternally be radio. People have been trying to kill off radio forever. It's not going anywhere.
I think about the shows that I love and follow closely, and I go, I think that's true. So I got a lot out of this conversation. I hope that you do too. Here we go. Welcome back to both of you.
Hello, hello.
Hey.
Nice to have you here. Jay, I'll start with you, man. What was your reaction when you heard that Netflix was making these moves in the podcasting world?
Well, I wasn't surprised because this kind of video podcast content has become a media powerhouse and a big moneymaker. And up until now, YouTube has been getting the lion's share of that video podcast business. So I'm not surprised Netflix wants to get in the game, especially because similar to how reality TV is just a lot cheaper to produce on average than a scripted show, podcast video content is going to be cheaper than a lot of other content Netflix usually produces or acquires. So it makes sense business-wise, but whether it'll be able to thrive on Netflix and fit in with people's viewing habits there is hard to say. So I'm curious to see how it'll go.
Feels important for me to note that the show that we are currently on right now as we speak, it started out as a radio show and a podcast, and then the cameras moved in. And now I'm sitting here talking to you guys in the studio, and I can see a perfectly clear, and it's wonderful, and people can watch this on YouTube. Michelle, what do you think is in it for a company like Netflix? And also, I guess I should ask, what's in it for a company like iHeartMedia?
Well, for Netflix, as Jay mentioned, their main competitor is YouTube. So what this does for them, I think, is secures really dynamic talent, proven content, and the fan communities that are attached to those shows. So I think that is the bet they're making. For iHeart, doing the deal obviously opens the door to new audiences, global audiences, viewers discovering these shows for the very first time outside of the dynamic of just audio only. And it's interesting because they do bill themselves as the #1 audio company. But if you look at their financials, they're up 22% in podcasting, but their broadcasting group was down 5% year over year. So it makes sense why they're pivoting.
I do want to dig into the whys of the story a little bit, Jay, but also I think it's important to sort of talk about the fact that one of the big pods on Netflix now is The Breakfast Club, which is, of course, one of the most popular hip-hop shows of all time. It's a radio show based out of New York City. Do you want to talk a little bit about how The Breakfast Club became sort of a pillar in the world of hip-hop?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say up front, their content is not always my cup of tea,
Sure.
but giving credit where it's due.
Yeah.
The two main hosts, Charlemagne and DJ Envy, they're both hip hop talk radio veterans from way back. Charlemagne started off as a protege of Wendy Williams way back in the 90s when she was doing radio, and Envy was part of the Miss Jones in the morning hip hop morning radio show. So they've both been doing this a long time. They're both veterans of this kind of borderline shock jock format where they have a lot of spicy hip hop celebrity related banter. So they know the formula. And I think they came together on The Breakfast Club with their other original co-host, Angela Yee, at the perfect time to capitalize on how well that kind of spicy banter does in this online social media era.
Well, I'm asking that because I think it's actually useful to contextualize that The Breakfast Club has kind of always been a little bit ahead of their time when it comes to saying, yeah, we're a radio show, but also we exist in the digital world. Do you want to talk about how they sort of managed to kind of stay a step ahead the whole time?
Yeah, as far as mainstream commercial hip hop radio goes, at least, they were one of the first to start regularly posting video content on YouTube in the early 2010s, I believe. And more recently, Charlemagne in particular has been kind of building his own video podcast empire with his production company that's named The Black Effect. They have the Drink Champs podcast with Noriega, the All the Smoke Talk Sports podcast.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know if this deal was spearheaded more by iHeartRadio radio than any of these individual shows, but I'm not surprised that Breakfast Club would be among the first making that move.
Michelle, I'll tell you where all this is headed for me is that like you keep hearing all the time how people are sort of thinking about these podcasts, these really popular podcasts, as basically a replacement for like daytime talk shows or just like talk shows in general. Like, but this is the idea of like we don't have that anymore, but what we have is this. Does that comparison feel true to you?
It does in terms of this, the content is conversational and sometimes outrageous and buzzy, but the transition for this is really rooted in audience habits and, is generational. When you think about it, it's, every demographic has a different relationship to, like you mentioned, daytime TV. So for audiences like 35 plus, they're accustomed to like that appointment listening, showing up at a certain time to view something. But also it's more of a lean back experience for them, right? Listening is more companionship with that host. But for younger audiences, they demand on-demand content and they grew up in a visual world. Social media dictated that. So that's the real change here.
Jay, when I'm watching a podcast on YouTube, I may be watching the first 10 to 15 seconds of it. I will click because I want it to sort of see it visually appealing. And then quite often I will sort of like click onto different windows, but I'm still listening to that experience, which is to say, do I need it to be a video? I think at the start I kind of do in order for it to hook me. But then after that, I kind of wander a little bit off the video. Does that feel like it's your experience as well? Or are you like, no, I will actually sit down and watch a video podcast?
I don't know that I necessarily sit and stare at the screen the entire time I'm taking in a podcast on YouTube. Yeah. But I will say, even as someone who comes from a radio background and in line with what Michelle said, I think there is a generational divide where someone my age is accustomed to appreciating that sort of unique, intimate connection you get through audio content, just connecting with the voice. I think especially during the pandemic lockdown, I got accustomed to having that face on the screen, keeping me company. And as you said, I look up every so often, make some faux eye contact, and I feel like they're there with me. And I think younger people especially are accustomed to spending hours of the day with a streamer on their screen, sharing some banter while they play a video game. So I think it has evolved to the point where it's the norm for a lot of people to sort of be primarily connecting with the voice, but you have the face on the screen there as well.
What about you, Michelle? Are you a video naysayer, or are you kind of like, I'm on board with this video podcasting situation?
I just think everyone whose task it is to reach audiences needs to pivot and react to changing consumer habits. But I will tell you that I listen to a lot of podcasts, but they're audio only. However, I am I'm launching a podcast of my own, and I'm going to make sure that it's video.
Okay, that's an interesting division because you're like, I understand that some people want video, but not me, not you personally as a consumer.
That's not how I use it. No.
Yeah, I have gone through periods of grief of like podcasts that I have loved for a long time, pivoting to video and saying, actually, I'm not sure. I think this changes my relationship with these hosts, right? It changes my relationship with the way that I consume this thing. I think it's worth maybe talking about, Michelle. We talked a little bit about how the upside of these like Netflix podcast deals, but there are, I think, some downsides as well. And we should talk about those, particularly for the podcasters, because if you make an exclusive deal with Netflix, then maybe you're losing access to one of the biggest platform on earth, which is, of course, YouTube. What do you make of that sort of trade-off in terms of the podcasters who are making this choice?
That's interesting because we don't know how this is going to work out in the end. But I think that Netflix is the biggest possible platform to see if this is going to work in terms of attaining audience. And also, I went to YouTube last night and looked to see, did they actually pull everything down? And it's clever what they're doing because they're keeping audio snippets up on YouTube to entice audiences to make the transition over to Netflix to watch them. So I think this is just growing the brand, quite frankly. And you have to plan for the next audience coming up. And the next audience, young people, want to watch as well as listen.
Jay, what about you? What do you make of the conundrum of like, I don't know, we're maybe trading some of this Netflix sort of glory for kind of missing out on the largest available audience, which is, of course, on YouTube?
Yeah, it's tricky because I mean, on YouTube, you're beholden to the whims of these mysterious algorithms. But if you can figure out how to game the algorithms, you have a measure of creative independence that you
Yeah.
can't really have somewhere like Netflix. And on Netflix, you're being propagated to a bigger audience. But whenever you connect with some big conglomerate or private equity or anything like that, they care about maximizing profits. And they may well decide a year from now, this isn't really working out. We're going to wipe your show from existence and your fans can never legally access it again.
Right.
So I think it's important to, at least in some form, keep cultivating a connection with your audience outside of this platform while you do this, because the
Yeah.
connection you make there will be precarious.
Michelle, there's something to be said about the fact that we are sort of, as we continue to watch a medium evolve in front of our eyes, we get to sort of evaluate how that is sort of changing. And we get to sort of say, yeah, this is working out for creators or it's not working out for creators. But not too long ago, podcasts were an audio-only format. And then that is obviously not the case anymore. But it does begin to raise this larger question, which is like, in the year 2026, what is the thing that makes a podcast actually a podcast?
The personality behind it. It's in here, it's the host. Whether it's happening in video or whether it's happening in audio, the bond, it's the DJ, it's the host. And what's interesting about this, the full circle moment, is the initial wave that created this movement of podcasting in the early 2000s was the result of massive layoffs of big name personalities after the first radio consolidation. They had audiences, they were big, they were professional broadcasters. And so they turned to this new platform to be direct to audience. So, and the biggest layoffs were from Clear Channel, who are now iHeart. So to Jay's point, yes, that's very real,
Yeah.
in terms of if it doesn't work, we're going to move on. But the bond is with the host. The audience is attracted to the conversation, the personality of the person who is an announcer. That is the power of what I think will eternally be radio. People have been trying to kill off radio forever. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere.
I not only do I love that, I'm going to take all the pressure that you just put on me and put it back onto you. It's not the host, it's the conversation. It's the two of you. So I really appreciate the quality of this conversation. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for coming here, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jay Smooth is a veteran hip-hop broadcaster and culture critic based in New York. Michelle Santosuosso is a veteran music industry insider and professor at Syracuse University. Her book, Radio Phoenix, is out now. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. And hey, this show, we'll see you tomorrow.